Sponsors! Thanks, bang, bang. Thank you.
Got this one, Nash, you got it? Just come in here a second. Right, Davante, we're from Notts Police. Yeah. Okay. You're going to be arrested, okay, on suspicion of conspiracy to import Class A.
On an ordinary weekday morning at Stansted Airport, customs officials paused over a parcel marked weight loss shakes. At first glance, it looked routine. But something didn't feel right. The weight. The packaging. The inconsistencies in the paperwork. They opened it. Inside, nearly a kilogram of crystal meth and 2 kilograms of cannabis, meticulously packed, vacuum-sealed, and hidden beneath layers of bubble wrap and deception. That one shipment, seemingly harmless, was the beginning of something far bigger. It would lead investigators through a maze of forged documents, fake shipping labels, and luxury purchases. It would cross borders, touch 3 continents, and expose a drug network unlike anything Nottinghamshire had seen before. And at the center of it all, was a man no one expected. Davante James. A well-known boxing coach. A role model to local youth. A man praised for changing lives. But investigators were about to uncover another side of him. One built on money, manipulation, and methamphetamine. His students called him Coach James. In the ring, he preached discipline, hard work, and integrity. He trained teenagers to throw punches, but only in the gym. He stood as a symbol of second chances, someone who knew the streets and chose a better path. But behind the applause, behind the handshakes and gym lights, there was something else. Packages were arriving. Addresses were changing. And money, lots of it, was moving in silence. What looked like protein powder and weight loss supplements concealed something far more dangerous. Crystal meth. Cannabis. Traced across continents, through private couriers, customs officers, and fake pharmaceutical documents. An office manager at a pharmaceutical company. Multiple associates across Nottinghamshire and beyond. A possible connection to a mysterious supplier in the Middle East, still unidentified. Each twist in the investigation uncovered another layer. Another name. Another lie. Why would a man praised for saving lives, risk everything to destroy them? And the bigger question, did his community ever truly know who he was? Before we dive deeper into this story, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, if you're fascinated by true crime stories that reveal what people hide in plain sight. Sherwood, Nottingham. A suburb where neighbors still greet each other by name. Independent shops line the high street. Local kids ride their bikes to school. It's the kind of place where reputations are built over years, and where someone like Davante James stood out, in all the right ways. To most, he was simply Coach. Davante James ran community boxing classes out of a small gym near Edwards Lane. He had a sharp mind for training, a quiet charisma, and a reputation for turning troubled youth into focused athletes. Parents trusted him. Teachers recommended him. He gave speeches at local schools about discipline and self-worth. He was also a father. A young dad raising his son, often posting motivational messages on social media about fatherhood and staying on the right path. To his followers, he was an example of growth. A man who'd known hardship, and had chosen to overcome it. But not all paths lead where they seem. Because while James was holding mitts in the ring and teaching kids how to block and jab, authorities say he was also coordinating international shipments of narcotics, using everyday parcels, false names, and multiple addresses to move dangerous drugs into the UK. It started quietly. One package was sent to an address in Hucknall. Then another to a flat in Mapperley. All seemingly unrelated. All signed under different aliases. But investigators would later connect them through surveillance, intercepted messages, and financial trails, all tracing back to Sherwood's star boxing coach. His social media told one story. Workouts, family time, and motivational quotes. But behind the screen, encrypted apps revealed something else, shipment schedules, drop-off points, and contact with names still unknown to this day. And then there was the money. More than £100,000 was spent in under a year. Luxury watches. Designer clothing. A trip to Dubai, where James was photographed poolside, while his gym back home relied on community grants to stay open. Yet no one asked too many questions. Because Davante James was the man who showed up. The man who volunteered at fundraisers, who handed out food parcels during lockdowns, and who gave young men something to fight for. But behind the smile, he was building an empire. And like any empire, it would eventually crumble. The first crack came in the form of a routine customs check. A box marked nutritional supplements was flagged for inconsistencies. Officers opened it. What they found would set off a chain of events that exposed a network far more organized. And far more dangerous than anyone in Sherwood could have imagined. And as investigators began to pull at the threads, one question echoed louder than the rest. How long had it been going on? And who else knew? At Stansted Airport, a customs officer opens a parcel flagged for inspection. It's labeled as a weight loss shake, nothing out of the ordinary. But inside, layered beneath sealed packaging and protein branding, was something else. Nearly 1 kilogram of crystal meth. 2 kilograms of cannabis. Hidden in plain sight. At first, it seemed like an isolated attempt. A single parcel slipping through the cracks of a larger system. But it wasn't isolated. Within days, forensic analysis linked the package to similar shipments. Same packaging style. Similar labeling. Slight variations in weight, but the same destination patterns. Nottingham. Stoke-on-Trent. Peterborough. Investigators began to map out the deliveries. More than 70 parcels. Dozens of addresses. Some homes didn't even know what had arrived. Others, as it turned out, were receiving packages regularly. Behind those doors, a pattern began to emerge. There was one common thread: Davante James. He hadn't signed for a single parcel himself. Instead, he'd asked friends, former gym members, and casual acquaintances to accept packages on his behalf. "Do me a favor," he said. "Just hold on to it." Some believed they were helping with a business. Others didn't ask questions at all. The addresses rotated. Some packages went to Airbnb rentals. Others to council flats. In one instance, a shipment arrived at an unoccupied house in Basford, rented out just 2 weeks prior under a false name. But while the packages moved discreetly, James himself was less cautious. On social media, he flaunted his lifestyle. Photos showed him poolside in Dubai. At a rooftop bar in Bangkok. Flashing designer watches, bundles of 50-pound notes, and captions quoting hustler mantras. "Work in silence," one read. "Let success make the noise." Investigators were watching, and listening. By June, surveillance was underway. Phone taps. Bank records. GPS tracking. His gym remained open. His Instagram is active. And every day, another parcel moved through the system. There was also something more troubling. A woman working at a private pharmaceutical company was flagged. She had access to labeling equipment, shipping software used to print barcodes and logistics data. Her personal laptop contained draft invoices and packaging labels matching those found on intercepted parcels. She knew James. Not intimately, but enough to raise alarms. Texts between the two were encrypted. Brief. Transactional. But they pointed to something larger, an infrastructure built on secrecy, layered contacts, and intentional misdirection. July brought more arrests, low-level runners, friends, and acquaintances who had unknowingly signed for deliveries. Most had little to say, claiming they thought they were helping with supplements or meal plans. But the evidence kept piling up. In August, investigators followed James to a short-term rental in Manchester. A package was delivered that evening. He never touched it, but security footage captured the delivery, a quick exchange, and a man leaving minutes later with the parcel in hand. The trap was nearly set. September 2023. Davante James was arrested in the early hours of the morning during a coordinated raid involving multiple agencies. He was found at a luxury apartment in Nottingham city centre, leased under another name. Inside, cash. More than £20,000 in stacked bills. Packaging supplies. Pre-printed labels. And a burner phone that would later link him to over 30 intercepted deliveries. But his arrest didn't end the story. As the case grew, so did its reach. New names surfaced. A courier service in Birmingham was flagged for suspicious handling patterns. A man in Spain was identified as a potential supplier. And James himself, tight-lipped in interviews, offered no cooperation. What investigators thought was a regional operation, was now something international. And one question lingered. Was Davante James the mastermind, or just a middleman in something far bigger? The answer was still buried in silence. And not everyone involved had been caught. Not yet. They called it Operation Continental. What began as a routine customs interception had quickly escalated into one of Nottinghamshire's largest and most complex criminal investigations in years. The serious organized crime unit was placed at the helm, but they weren't alone. Within weeks, UK Border Force, the US Embassy, and Australian border officials joined the task force. Patterns of drug packaging uncovered in Stansted matched seizures in Sydney. Labels. Weights. Even the courier companies. The fingerprints of one operation were suddenly visible across 3 continents. Back in Nottingham, the ground game had already begun. Undercover officers were deployed to gyms, bars, rental properties, anywhere James was seen or associated. Surveillance units watched his every move. Cameras hidden in parked vans. Microphones embedded in street lamps. A network of quiet eyes following a man who still walked like nothing was wrong. Then came the break. A woman in London, employed by a mid-level pharmaceuticals firm, was brought in for questioning. She had no criminal record. No known connections. But her company's printing software had been used, without authorization, to produce the fake shipping labels that disguised methamphetamine as medical-grade supplements. Her laptop revealed hidden folders. Dozens of PDF labels. Mock invoices. Addresses across Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, and Peterborough. But the digital trail led somewhere even stranger, a recurring encrypted contact listed only as safe. This same alias appeared in James's burner phone, buried among encrypted chats and file transfers. The messages were minimal, just dates, weights, and short confirmation codes. But one thread was unmistakable: the Middle East. Interpol was contacted. Intelligence analysts traced activity to Dubai and Qatar, specifically, temporary devices activated near commercial warehouse zones. Whoever Safe was, he wasn't new to this. He'd left little trace. And then, a voice recording changed everything. In a conversation intercepted over a WhatsApp call, James is heard referring to an upcoming shipment. "Same as last time," he says. "Make sure the weight's right. They'll test it when it lands." The voice on the other end was distorted, possibly manipulated. But the cadence, investigators believed, matched a subject of interest in a prior meth seizure in the UAE. James had ties to someone much higher. Back home, Nottinghamshire police widened their net. Raids were carried out in Clifton, Basford, and Radford. One flat revealed more than anyone expected: an industrial-grade heat sealer, bulk packaging, and a diary. Inside, handwritten notations, dates, initials, and 4-letter codes. Cross-referencing those codes revealed the unthinkable: each was a customer tag. The operation hadn't just been smuggling wholesale, it had built a delivery network. Direct to customer, across the UK. But still, there were questions. Where was the remaining product? And who else was part of the chain? A search of James's bank accounts revealed over £200,000 in transactions across multiple shell companies. Small clothing lines. Marketing firms with no physical offices. But one payment stood out: £14,300 sent to a logistics company in Istanbul. No return contact. No explanation. And then came the final blow. A warehouse unit on the edge of Stoke-on-Trent was raided. Hidden behind pallets of household cleaning supplies were 3 plastic barrels. Inside, crystal meth. Purity level, 98%. Street value, over £7 million. Nottinghamshire's largest ever methamphetamine seizure. Alongside it, £70,000 worth of cannabis. And a locked metal case containing multiple passports, fake driver's licenses, and a USB drive, encrypted, still under analysis. James was charged. 8 others were named. But investigators weren't celebrating yet. Because safe was still out there. And every clue, every seizure, seemed to point to one final, unanswered question. Was James running the operation? Or was he simply the most visible piece of a much larger game? They weren't strangers off the street. They were familiar faces. Men who walked the same neighborhoods, attended the same community events, and, on the surface, lived ordinary lives. But behind closed doors, they were part of a network. One that stretched across countries, across industries, and beneath the radar of everyday law enforcement. Rakeem Thomas, age 28. The courier. The runner. But more than that. A tactician in the operation's movement strategy. Rakeem handled drop-offs and pickups and coordinated the timing of inbound parcels to avoid suspicion. He was seen delivering packages in broad daylight, never flinching, never rushing. He wore gym clothes, carried protein shakes, and always had a plausible excuse. To the untrained eye, he was just another personal trainer on the go. But text records showed a pattern, precise times, coded messages, and images of packaging labels sent to burner phones. Lamar Taylor, age 32. Lamar had charisma. The kind that made people listen, follow, and rarely question. He was the connector, the bridge between James and the local-level distributors. He operated from the nightlife scene, using lounges, gyms, and rented penthouses as transaction points. Authorities believe he also managed risk, changing phones weekly, never using the same vehicle twice, and avoiding digital transactions. But a careless Instagram story. Geotagged at a villa in Pattaya, Thailand, matched travel dates linked to a shipment traced back to Southeast Asia. It was the first thread in a fabric he couldn't fully hide. Khyam Raymond, 27, and Lavendi Cameron, 26. Not as visible. But not unimportant. They were the structure, the ones who signed for parcels, picked up decoy packages, and arranged storage. One flat in Stoke-on-Trent, rented under a false name, was found to contain vacuum-sealed cannabis, digital scales, and dozens of fake DHL uniforms. In group chats, they joked about coach's vitamins, code, police say, for the incoming drugs. Neither man had a prior record. Neither seemed the type. But under James's influence, they believed they were part of something clever. Something untouchable. Then, there was Jesse Colo. Age 30. The outlier. The linchpin. Jesse didn't come from the streets. He didn't share the background of the others. He worked quietly at Perigo, a pharmaceutical firm, as an office manager with keycard access to restricted systems. Using company software, Jesse created counterfeit shipping documents, labels that looked legitimate to any customs officer. Labels that allowed meth and cannabis to move across borders disguised as weight loss supplements, protein powders, and vitamin packs. When his hard drive was seized, police found encrypted folders containing spreadsheets, parcel tracking logs, and offshore account details. He claimed he was paid for consulting. He never asked what the labels were used for. But the question investigators kept coming back to was motive. Why would men with clean records, community ties, and steady jobs risk everything? For some, it was financial. Lavish lifestyles don't fund themselves. Exotic travel, designer clothes, luxury cars, James flaunted it all, and others followed suit. For others, it was power. The feeling of running something complex. Outsmarting the system. Moving product right under the noses of international authorities. But the deeper truth may lie in James's reputation itself. As a boxing coach, he inspired trust. As a community mentor, he opened doors. Parents let their sons train with him. Landlords rented without hesitation. Neighbors signed for parcels without suspicion. And that trust, earned in gyms and charity events, became the very shield that protected the operation. Some who were involved may not have known the full extent. Some may have believed they were helping with a health brand. Others may have looked the other way, too blinded by lifestyle and loyalty to ask questions. But loyalty doesn't hold up in court. And when investigators pulled the thread, the entire web began to unravel. In a courtroom packed with press, family, and former students, the name Davante James echoed not with admiration, but with judgment. In May 2025, after months of legal maneuvering, the trial of Nottinghamshire's most complex drug case came to a close at Nottingham Crown Court. The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance, digital footprints, intercepted parcels, and testimonies left little room for doubt. All 9 defendants, once friends, employees, and co-conspirators, stood and pleaded guilty to importing Class A and Class B drugs into the United Kingdom. Davante James, the once beloved coach, was sentenced to 17 years in prison. His reaction was quiet. No emotion. No statement. Just a long look toward the gallery, where a few faces from his former life stared back in disbelief. Rakeem Thomas, the logistical mastermind, received 11 years and 6 months. Lamar Taylor, the charismatic distributor who once hosted luxury parties in rented villas, was handed 7 years and 6 months. Kayam Raymond and Lavandy Cameron, both described as operational assistants, were sentenced to 45 months and 38 months, respectively. Their roles were minor, but not insignificant. And then there was Jesse Colo, whose actions behind the scenes at a pharmaceutical firm facilitated the international smuggling. He was sentenced to 5 years and 4 months. The court noted his access, his betrayal of trust, and the potential for far more damage if the scheme hadn't been uncovered when it was. With the sentences delivered, the case was formally closed. The network was dismantled. The damage, already done. Still, investigators continue to monitor the digital trail. Some encrypted messages remain unsolved. And the identity of the foreign-based supplier, believed to be operating from the Middle East, has yet to be revealed publicly. Was Davante James the architect? Or just the face? The case may be closed. But not every question has been answered. Not yet. For the community of Sherwood, Nottingham, the arrest and conviction of Davante James felt like a betrayal that echoed far beyond courtroom walls. Here was a man who taught discipline, preached hard work, and inspired young men to put down the knife and pick up the gloves. Parents once entrusted him with their sons. Community leaders cited him as a model of how sport could change lives. But after the trial, those same voices fell silent. Some removed his photos from gym walls. Others refused to speak his name at all. Youth programs once associated with James were forced into re-evaluation. Funding was reviewed. Oversight was tightened. And new mentors, carefully vetted, stepped in to rebuild what was lost. Not just in infrastructure, but in trust. For some young people, it wasn't just about boxing anymore. It was about wondering how someone who preached structure could operate in chaos. How the same hands that wrapped gloves could package poison. The impact reached law enforcement too. Nottinghamshire police implemented new protocols to track unusual shipping behaviors and to investigate seemingly legitimate businesses being used as covers. Partnerships were strengthened with UK Border Force, international customs agencies, and digital forensics teams. The lessons of Operation Continental weren't just about drugs. They were about perception. About how easily trust can be manipulated when ambition goes unchecked. And about how even the most promising role models can lead double lives undetected, until it's too late. The legacy of Davante James remains complex. For some, he'll always be the coach who believed in them when no one else did. For others, he's the man who jeopardized everything good he built for a taste of luxury and power. But one thing is certain, in Nottingham, the gloves are off. And the community he left behind is still picking up the pieces. Davante James was more than a coach. To many, he was a symbol of redemption, proof that structure, mentorship, and purpose could shape futures. But beneath that image was a hidden world. One built on deception, exploitation, and greed. His fall wasn't just personal, it sent shockwaves through an entire community. It forced hard questions about trust, about appearances, and about how easily even the most celebrated figures can walk two paths. This case stands as a sobering reminder that not every leader leads with integrity, and not every mentor deserves the pedestal they're placed on. It challenges us to stay aware, to ask the difficult questions, and to protect the institutions that serve our youth. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a deep look into the darkest corners of real crime stories. Because behind every headline, there's a truth waiting to be told. We'll see you in the next one.